This next performer, he is like the good feeling you get after sex personified. He is warm, he is sexy, he is adorable, he is loving, he is just the greatest, and I love him. He plays the wonderful, perfect, and imperfectly perfect Carlos on Welcome to Night Vale, a show that I'm also on. He is a neo-futurist and a wonderful person. Please welcome to the stage Dylan Marron.
Hi guys, how's it going? That was quite an intro to live up to. And the good feeling after sex, I'm gonna put that on my resume. Guys, with the World Cup going on, that fell on my hand, it hurt. But there's adrenaline, so you don't feel it hurt so bad. With the World Cup going on upstairs, it kind of feels like we're all the theater kids that went to the Black Box Theater underneath the gym while they're having a basketball game, and you're like, it's okay, one day we'll be cool. So that's what I feel right now. But the story I want to tell you about is when I was in the 3rd grade. So I was a 3rd grader here. I grew up in New York City. I went to PS6. Any New York City people here? New York! Yes! Okay, one person. Have you heard of PS6? Yes, sir! Oh my god, great. We know each other. I went to PS6, and in 3rd grade, there is this grade-wide project. It's the Cinderella project, and it's not, that sounds like a non-profit. It's not a non-profit at all. The Cinderella project is actually, it's basically a way to teach kids about parable. It's a way to teach kids about storytelling and how to write. And so you take this very, very well-known story of Cinderella, and we basically would read all sorts of Cinderella stories from around the world. They exist like everywhere. It's like such a staple. And so the idea was that we were going to rewrite these Cinderella stories. That is how we were going to learn parable, how something stands for one thing, and we were going to adapt them. We were going to adapt them to our lives so that the Cinderella story fit us. So this was super exciting. This is what we spent most of the day working on. We actually split our days because this is 3rd grade and it's New York City and it's the Giuliani era, so we were about to start doing standardized tests. So our days were kind of split between Cinderella story and writing and reading Cinderella stories and watching Cinderella movies and prepping for standardized tests. And the day usually ended with like a sort of series of announcements from the main office. The main office was like headquarters, and we all got the announcements from them, and then one day ended early, and Miss Renard, my 3rd grade teacher, read this bulletin that the main office sent out to all the teachers to read. And the bulletin was from 20th Century Fox. And they were holding an open casting call for Home Alone 3. They were going to do a reboot of the Home Alone series. And they were looking for the next Macaulay Culkin, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to be the next Macaulay Culkin. And I was like, I understand parable, this is my Cinderella moment. I am Macaulay Culkin, the glass slipper is this role, and I'm done, I graduated 3rd grade. But that's not how it worked. This is a really comfortable position. That's not how it worked. So I was busy formulating in my mind how I was going to tell my other 3rd grade friends that I was going to leave in 2 months to go film Home Alone 3 in Hollywood. I had no idea what that looked like, but I was going to go there. I was going to go to Hollywood. I could already feel like the paparazzi lens. I could feel the cement on my hands that I was going to imprint on the sidewalk, wherever that was. But first I had to convince my parents that I was going to do this. And now you guys are familiar with the trope of like the stage parent, you know? Like Dance Moms. I don't watch that show, but I assume they're like stage parents. Yeah, nods, sort of, like this is cool. And so I was like the inverse of that trope. I was the stage kid who was like dragging his parents to be more forceful. And my parents were like, sure, honey, whatever you want. And I wanted them to like force me to take a headshot, but instead they were like, this picture is really cute. And so I wanted them to push me to do it. So they weren't going to do it, so I had to buckle down and I was going to push them to push me to do it. So I told them, I was like, this is happening. I am going to be the next Macaulay Culkin. You're not going to get in my way. We're going to go. And I have to say, like, these sort of like artist temper tantrums look very subdued when they have a 9 p.m. bedtime. And so they took me only so seriously, but they agreed to do it. And I was beside myself with excitement, you know. Not only was I going to be the next Macaulay Culkin, but I had to prepare for it. So I watched like Home Alone, and I watched Home Alone 2, and I like learned how to work the talk boy, you know, that main product placement they have in that movie. And I didn't have a talk boy of my own, but I watched him, and I sort of tried to emulate the deadpan that Macaulay Culkin does. And I was so excited. I imagined myself on the cover of that VHS, and I wanted to own that VHS and my face on that VHS. And so I prepared and prepared and prepared, because this was going to be my moment. This was going to be the moment, parable, get ready for it. This was going to be the moment that I went to the ball, the glass slipper was going to fit. I was going to become famous. Fame was my salvation because I didn't have friends. And right, that's how it works, guys. And then, so I went to the audition. My parents took me, and I thought it was going to be like a small, select group of people. I didn't understand what nationwide casting meant. It meant that every boy in New York City dragged their parents to this open call, or vice versa, so that they could be the next Macaulay Culkin. And I was like, that's really cute, but I'm going to be the next Macaulay Culkin. And so we got in this really long line. It was being hosted at a school over the weekend. The line was just around the block, and it was just to get into the holding room that was the auditorium. And when we were there, we actually ran into my friend Brian, who was there with his mom. And Brian was like not into acting. So I was like, great, I'm here with an amateur. That's okay. I'm spending my time. This is charity work. Brian was just there on a whim. He was just there to try it out. He was there to have fun. I think his mom was like, you want to try this? And he was like, yeah, sure. Meanwhile, I was like yelling to my parents about how important this was for me. And they were like, okay, here's your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Calm down. And so we waited in line for like a few hours, and then we got in, and this room was a scene, you guys. It was like a lot of parents like fussing over their kids. You know, if we want the parable to continue, it's like the little mice in Cinderella that are fussing over Cinderella, but it was the kids were Cinderella. And the parents were the mice, and they were just like fixing each other's their hair and holding their headshots and all of that stuff. And here's how this audition worked, from what I could see, is that it was an auditorium full of people, and they were slowly being called up group by group, and there were 3 rows of 7 chairs on the stage. And kids were slowly filing in to sit in these seats. And what was happening was that a casting director or a casting assistant was just going around and having the kids stand up, look them up and down, and decide if they were appropriate. It was very intimidating. So, you know, we saw all of this happen, and then some kids were getting red cards, and they were going into the side door, and then some of the kids were just coming back into the auditorium and being sent home. And I got up there, and I got up there with Brian, and you know, Brian was first. He was right next to me, and I saw the casting director come up to him, and they talked for a while. I didn't totally hear because like adrenaline was pumping in my ears, and I like couldn't hear a thing. And I heard them talking for a while, and I saw him pull out a red card, and he gave it to Brian, and I was like, I had no idea Brian was going to be my main competition for this role. That's okay. I prepared for a whole week. I know how to learn. I know how to use a talk boy. That was the big thing. I know how to use a talk boy. And so Brian got the red card, and he was sent to that room, and I was like, whoa, well, this is going to be super easy. I'm just going to stand up on this chair. So the casting director came to me. I stood up on the chair, and the casting director looked me up and down, and he had this like questionable look on his face of like, what was I doing there? And he just asked for my name. And that was it. And I told him my name, and I was expecting him to pull out a red card. And instead he just said, thank you so much for coming. You can leave. And I was like too heartbroken to feel anything. I just felt totally numb. I went back to my parents, we were leaving, Brian's mom was gonna wait there because Brian got on to the next round. And I remember noticing that there was a difference between the kids who got that red card and the kids who were sent home. And it's not that the kids who were sent home, it's not that we all looked like each other, okay? It's that we didn't look like the kids who got the red card. All of the kids who got the red card look like they could be Macaulay Culkin's brother or cousin, if you know what I mean. And all of the other ones definitely didn't. And that didn't mean we looked like each other. That just meant maybe our hair was a little bigger, maybe our eyes were a different shape, maybe our skin were a few shades darker. And that was really the first time I kind of encountered race. So I was like, fuck parables. Parables is bullshit. This is not the ball. I didn't get the glass slipper. Fuck Cinderella. But I had to go to school on Monday because I was a really good student. And so I went to school and I went back into this world of taking standardized tests, and I went back into this world of writing the Cinderella story. And in these standardized tests that we were doing, there was sort of like a mock-up of, we kind of like, you know when you're taking a practice test and you like recreate the situation of the test so you feel super high stress? You guys know what I'm talking about? So we did that, but for third graders. So we took that really boring first sheet, you know, when you have to like bubble in the letters of your name and you're like, this is so not intuitive, I don't know where D-Y-L-A-N is, but you bubble it in and you have to bubble it fully because otherwise they can't read it, and if they don't read it, you know, they're going to hell or something. And then I was confronted again with that question of what is your race? And I'm biracial. I never know what to put in that selection of bubbles. There are very few options for race. There are so many races in the world, very few options on this test. There is white, there's black, there's Hispanic, there's Asian, there's Native American, and then there's other. And it was kind of like the audition. It was a process of elimination. I didn't know what to put. I knew what I wasn't, but I didn't know what I was. My mom is white, my dad is Hispanic. But I didn't know which one to fill in because I felt like it wasn't going to be true to what I actually was. And so I ended up filling in the other box. And what that other box basically says is that you're statistically insignificant. It doesn't matter. You know, it's saying we want to keep tabs on what these races do, but we don't care about this. This is what you are, great, you're still welcome to take this test, but it doesn't really matter. So once again, I felt unclassified. I felt ambiguous. And what is so dangerous in this, I felt like this test was kind of giving me the same look that I felt like this test was giving me the same look that casting director gave me. I felt like it was giving me this question mark. I felt like it was afraid of me. It felt like it couldn't classify me. It didn't know what I was doing on that stage. It didn't know what I was doing taking this test. And I realized that since we are so afraid of the unclassifiable and so afraid of the ambiguous, then the ambiguous begin to feel afraid of themselves. And I never wanted to talk about race because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand where I fit in. I didn't understand what I was. So I didn't even want to talk to my parents about this because I felt my parents knew what to fill in for the bubbles on that test, but I didn't because I was a product of them. And so I was like not into this lesson of parable. And it finally made sense to me about a year later. Are you guys familiar with the brandy version of Cinderella? There is no greater gift than the brandy version of Cinderella. Thank you. It deserves all the applause it can get. I watched that movie kind of begrudgingly because I now have this really bad sense of Cinderella in my mind because I was like, I didn't get my glass slipper, so I'm bitter now. But I watched it, and it wasn't the whole movie. I mean, Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother is a gift to us all. But it's the fact that there is a Filipino actor playing the prince. He's playing Prince Charming. And he is the son of Whoopi Goldberg, a black woman, and Victor Garber, a white man. And nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares that this Filipino guy is the product of a white man and a black woman. Because you know the story, you know how it goes, you know that he's Prince Charming, you don't have to buy into it. You're already submitting to the idea of the story. You know, you get it, you're just plugging it in. And so I feel that what I really learned in that moment is that parable is super important. And parable is not about retelling the story exactly as it was. It's not about finding the Macaulay Culkin that is identical to Macaulay Culkin. It's about retelling the story so that it has new meaning, so that when you show this to a kid who doesn't know where he fits in or what circle to fill in on the standardized tests, that suddenly he feels like he belongs. So thank you so much.